Hi, everyone, and welcome to Spreadsheets Aren't Good Enough Anymore, stepping up to specialized software for heavy construction estimating. Thanks for being here. I'm David Kennedy, the editor of Onsite Magazine. I'm here today with Mark Hooks, who is going to take us through some of the key capabilities and competitive advantages that software designed specifically for estimating has over using spreadsheets. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, B2W, for making this webinar possible. Also, just one quick housekeeping item. We've saved time at the end of the discussion for questions, so if you have a question at any point, simply type it into the question pane on the right side of your screen, and we'll get to it after the presentation. Now, let's take a look at our presenter. Mark Hooks is a senior solutions engineer at B2W Software. He has worked with heavy civil construction companies throughout North America for more than a decade, assisting them in reviewing estimating and operations workflows and evaluating software solutions. The B2W Software One platform includes unified applications to manage estimating, resource scheduling, field tracking, and equipment maintenance, as well as paperless data capture and business intelligence. With that, I'll pass things over to Mark to get us started.
Thank you, David, for the introduction, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And the topic spreadsheets just aren't good enough anymore. That's going to be where we take the conversation. Over my really 12 years of working in the industry, I've seen a lot of ways that people estimate, and I've seen things progress over the years really into data-driven, estimating software-based estimating, which really is the future, and that's what we're going to talk about. If you look at the agenda that I have on the screen, we're going to start with a quick look at the history of estimating. I got a few kind of comical areas we'll talk about, but I think it'll make the point how estimating has gone a long way over the years and will continue to progress through the years. We'll talk about some key points on why spreadsheets just aren't good enough and some key points on what people have told me throughout the years on why they're having trouble using spreadsheets for their estimating modality. What is data-driven estimating? I'm going to talk about that, and you'll hear me say data-driven estimating quite a lot through the demonstration today. And then, why are we even having this discussion? You guys are in business. You're doing well. Why have the discussion about going away from something that you know and you trust to go to more data-driven estimating? We'll talk about your current state. Where are you now? Because that's not the same for everyone, and how you can easily progress through even very rudimentary styles of estimating into a more data-driven software style. We'll talk about the requirements of a data-driven system because we'll talk about what it is, but I'm also going to talk about what you should expect from a good data-driven system. And then the final thing we'll talk about is bringing it all together. When you win that job, we know it's not the end of the process for the estimating folks and also now the operations folks, how we can bring all that together after you win the job. So the quick look at the history of estimating, and even in the years that I've been doing this, has come a long way. When I go into offices, I've heard people tell me everything that, they're in the Stone Age. They really feel like it's almost like cranking out a tablet every time that something changes in a bid, every time they need to find something in an estimate. It's really archaic. And this is a little comical, but it makes the point that, estimating has really come a long way over the years. When you even take, the hieroglyphics, it's another way that you can look at. These are truly crews and ways that people have used the information in their head. You can see the screen here. There's three guys on the crew. There's two different sized buckets. There's a foreman. There's a superintendent, all getting them what they need to build the pyramids in the day. Over my years, I've seen things progress even to the dreaded, I call it the napkin estimate. I'm sure that there are folks out there who've been sitting at lunch, and when they get a call, they don't run to their spreadsheet, they don't run to their computer, they don't run to their yellow pad, they pull out a napkin, and I've seen quickly 3-4 line items bids all automatically processed very fast. And then I have to tell you, there's so many people that when I was a trainer, I would walk into a room and they would bring out their yellow pad and say, well, I want you to show me how I can do a bid faster than this. But each of these areas of estimating, you have to have respect for, because the end result for each one of these has kept folks like yourself in business over the years. And I have to give some props to the yellow pad at the end. I've trained a lot of people off that yellow pad, but I trust that because every day when I drive through the Atlanta area, this is called the Spaghetti Junction, and Mr. Moreland really did bid that on a yellow piece of paper, and it's something you've got to trust a lot as you drive through the bottom line on that road. But the biggest breakthrough through the years as we've gone from really, it's coming at, I got to get it out of my head. I've got to put it on a piece of paper. I've got to pound it out on a tablet, whatever you do. The biggest breakthrough was Excel. And Excel spreadsheets are phenomenal. They do a huge amount of calculation, storage of central data. There's a lot that it does, and a lot of people have built their companies based on that Excel spreadsheet. But as time goes on, things have changed. So there are a lot of things that Excel spreadsheet just can't give you. And that's what we're going to talk about now. We're going to talk about top spreadsheet liabilities. What are the main things that I've heard from customers over the year and still hear that a spreadsheet doesn't do well? First one you'll look at there is mistakes, formula errors. I've literally seen spreadsheets that were 20, 30, 40, 50 tabs long for a construction industry working on a single estimate. And you know that on tab 27, if cell A24 is broken for some reason, it could be just someone who'd worked in there who just touched something and didn't pay attention to what they were doing. That broken formula is going to carry across every bid that you do until it's obvious, until somebody goes and digs through that spreadsheet to find it. So mistakes are common. And we see it all the time with companies that I've trained off of Excel spreadsheets onto data-driven systems. Time is money. And for any construction industry, spending days and days and days on a bid, you've now lost the advantage to get maybe more estimates into the work to make more money. Searching for data, and again, looking for anything that may be potentially wrong in that spreadsheet, it's a manual search. You're going through and looking tab by tab, cell by cell, to see if there's anything obvious that you need to do, and also reporting. If you need to get anything out of a spreadsheet, again, you're searching manually for the data, or you're building yet another tab that talks to 4 other parts of the spreadsheet to give you your final information. A lot of inefficiencies I've seen over the years. Starting from scratch was one of the big ones. Every time somebody needs to create a new estimate, well, it's a new spreadsheet, and it's a new crew, and it's new multiple crews that they're building. Every item has to be rebuilt. So the starting from scratch perspective, again, means that there's not a lot of standardization. There's not a lot of carryover of good practices from one estimate to the other. So the inefficiency in there, starting from scratch, really, again, is time consuming. But again, it's just that redundancy and also potential for mistakes if you're forgetting some of those critical areas of the estimate. And redundancy. This is one you're going to hear me talk about more than probably 5 or 10 times today. In an Excel spreadsheet, it's almost impossible to get the data to other third-party systems. And we frequently see that with ERP and accounting systems. The spreadsheet is not going to talk to your accounting system. It's not going to take the information in any way, automate it, and get it over to, say, your project scheduling softwares. Those are manual entries that most folks are doing that take, again, a lot of time. But as you guys know, every time you touch information and manually move it over into another system, there's that potential for error. So we need to cut that down, and that's one of those top liabilities that we've heard over the years. Difficult collaboration. This is another thing that really is huge in systems. If you're using a spreadsheet, you're really passing it around the room for folks to do the work. You can't have 5 people in the same spreadsheet at the same time managing an estimate. So the process there is the last hour of the bid. You've got to get this bid out. The deadline's hit. You got to get it out the door. You've got subcontractors. You've got vendors. You've got the owner looking over your head saying, change this, this, and this. And it's down to one guy to do it, and he's in a hurry. So again, collaboration is huge because, again, it saves time and decreases errors. So that's some of the top spreadsheet liabilities that I've heard over the years. And again, what is data-driven estimating? Where are we going with this? Data-driven estimating is estimating with verifiable data. That's your data. That's your labor types. That's your equipment types. That's your underlying cost. And that's used with specialized estimating software. And some of the things to see in a data-driven system, again, we're going from something that's prone to mistakes to something that's free from mistakes. Nobody's going to break the calculations in the back end of estimating software. They're protected. So the accuracy is there. It's free from errors. It's free from mistakes. So you can always trust the information that you're getting pushed out on any data-driven estimating software type system. Ease of use is also something that you really see with a good quality data-driven system. Excel spreadsheets, again, those 40, 50 tabs, how a new estimator can walk in the door and figure out how they're supposed to put a bid together with all those different things that they have to learn, the 50 tabs, the 400 cells that need to be filled in. A good data-driven system is easy. It's built on good technology. It's easy on the eye with the user interface if it's done right. It makes sense when you touch something on the screen. Automated data entry and workflows. This means that there should be, using your verifiable data, you should be able to put things in the system and they automatically calculate the way that you expect them, setting up standards, setting up what I refer to as factors. When you change one number, you've got a factor that says, well, I need 4 of those every time I do a foot of that. So you should have automated data entry and workflows built into a data-driven system. And the next one, simultaneous multi-user access. You should be able to have multiple people working in the same estimate at exactly the same time. Again, saving time, getting everything done on time, getting more bids out the door, being more efficient in the estimating process. And data-driven systems over and above an Excel spreadsheet are continuously improved and updated. If you're going to do anything to update Excel, well, you can pull down an update to Excel. It changes what you can do within Excel, but if you're using it for an estimating tool, you've got to go in and make those updates. You've got to go in and make those improvements. And again, every time you manually go in and touch anything, it's prone to mistakes. And reporting. You've got to be able to analyze the data, and all good data-driven systems are going to be able to give you that information in multiple ways, rather than looking at each of the tabs on the spreadsheet or the summary page to give you a final look at your estimate. That's one way. You should be able to look at the reportable information out of an estimate in multiple ways. And again, we're coming back to I said I'm going to mention this more than a few times today, ability to share that data. When you're finished with the estimate, there should be some modality that you at least can put out a text or a CSV file with the data in the file form. Then it needs to go out to get it into your accounting system, to get it into your project scheduling system, to get it out to the field in a meaningful way. So the ability to share that data is absolutely huge. And data-driven systems also let you store reusable information. Centralized storage for all estimators who are going to be working there to pull from of what I refer to as reusable resources. That's things like your labor types, your equipment types, your crew templates, material list, all that with stored underlying costs that you can manage, knowing that you can store them in a default state. But when you pop it over into a bid, it can easily be managed and updated and tweaked just a bit to accommodate that specific project. Same thing with miscellaneous cost, fees, permits, things like that you know you're going to have. There's no reason to rebuild that every time you need it the way that you would have to do in Excel. And then a centralized customer, subcontractor, vendor database. Again, one solid place in the bid in the program that all estimators can pull from and utilize that information. Spreadable cost, incidentals, things like project trailers, porta potties, small tools, costs that you know that you need, rather than having to go into each tab and allocate to each area of your bid. You should be able to store those in a central area and be able to hit a button and have that spread out across your estimate. bid item and template libraries. Now, in an Excel spreadsheet, you can store on a tab line items and reuse those. But that's very inefficient because in most companies that do varying styles of work, that could be hundreds of tabs that you need to store to get that information. A library situation is where you can go in and look down a list and say, I'm going to use that item, I'm going to use that underlying task, and I'm going to pull that in, and it can already have underlying structure. Crews could be built in. Your labor cost, your material list could already be there for you. Work breakdown structures is something that's really difficult inside Excel. And for the folks out there who are not familiar with the term work breakdown structures, it's a different way of bidding a job. Most civil contractors in the heavy construction industry will bid line, pay, or tender items inside a bid, and they'll work up the cost for each of those within, there could be, excavation in each of those items. There could be, different types of work inside the item because that's the way the customer wants to give it to you, and then you return that information to your customer. Work breakdown structures are a little different in that it's a different way to bid the work the way that you do the work. So all of your site construction, your excavation from across a job is in one bucket. All of your pipe work is in one bucket. Everything's in one structure, but a good system will also let you turn that around. You build it and cost it the way you do it, but you can turn around and present it back to your customer the way they want to see it. Request for quote, RFQ management is also a big, huge, and you just can't do this in Excel as well. It's really hard because a good request for quote management system is going to let you not only, choose which guy, but analyze which guy you're going to buy those services from, whether it be your vendors or whether it be your subcontractors. Bring those in, get your those folks for either the services or the materials, put them all in, and on one page, be able to look and analyze and say, I want to buy the materials from that guy, and have those costs now spread into 100 different parts of your bid if that's how many places you have those materials, or lock in those services with your subcontractor and their stated prices. And ultimately, proposal creation is another thing that Excel just doesn't do very well. Now, you can have a proposal come out on one of your tabs of your spreadsheet, but let's say you want to group it. You want to put it in by phase. You want to group things by work type, see subtotaling, put your, all your terms, conditions, all that information, and be able to vary that from bid to bid to bid. It's just what a good data-driven system can do for you. And validation error checking. As I mentioned, if something goes wrong in an Excel spreadsheet, there's not a whole lot of ways for you to find it until you've just lost money over and over and over until you just have to go in and rekey all the areas of that spreadsheet. So being able to hit a button and have the information error checked and validated throughout the bidding process. Being able to check for costing errors, pricing errors, request for quote management errors, bid closing errors, those kinds of things should be right at your fingertips. And centrally stored estimates is another thing that a data-driven system can do for you. Excel, you're storing each of your files centrally on your hard drive in separate folders, and now they are desperate. They can't talk to each other. You can't get information across those centrally stored bids. In a data-driven system, you should be able to store them centrally, easily access them, throw them up side by side on a screen, grab and drop things from one estimate to the other, and also ultimately reporting at your fingertips across those estimates. You should be able to report multiple different ways in a single bid, but storing those centrally gives you the ability to look across all of your estimates, to look at trends, so you're doing trend analysis so that you can tune up your next bid. And again, there's that integration with third-party systems. You should be able to, in a data-driven system, easily get the information out in multiple ways to get it to your ERP or your accounting system. Share that information with the field. We're going to talk about that in a little more detail as we go through, but how do you know how you're doing if you don't share the information with the field so that you can get that information so you can compare how you estimated the job and how they're performing the work and get that delta? Most folks do that at the end of the job to see if they've done well. Scheduling. dispatching, and again, project management. I have literally seen people sit hours and almost days on large projects to take the information from their Excel spreadsheet estimate and get it into, say, project or P6. So again, easily being able to integrate with third-party systems saves time and money for any company. So as David mentioned, I work for B2W Software, and this is our estimating tool, and this is what I'm going to be using to show you some of the screenshots for, the things that we've already talked about storing information and reporting and things like that. B2W Estimate, the estimating program's been around for 27 years. It's our flagship product. It's a database-driven system built on the latest .NET SQL technology. User interfaces, we've really worked on that over the years to make sure that when somebody goes into the program, it makes sense. What they're looking on, what they're clicking on, and things make sense. And you'll see that as we go through. So we talked about centralized storage of resources and cost. That's what you're seeing here. We call those costing resources. And this is where, in a good data-driven system, you should be able to store in one area all of the reusable resources that can then be copied over into an estimate, and then they become wide open so that you can make any changes in the bid. Those changes will stick. They'll be estimate specific. You'll always have these libraries, so to speak, to pull from of the building blocks of your bid. So labor, equipment, crew templates, material list, miscellaneous cost. Now, I keep bad-mouthing Excel, but you'll notice here, even in our program, Excel is a very powerful tool. We actually integrate Excel into our program to give us multi-level calculations that you can utilize to feed information into the estimate. It definitely has its place. Underlying task templates, which would be like if you have sub-items, you have a line item or a tender item, and then you have areas of work you want to do and organize underneath. We call those tasks. And then again, one central library to store all your competitors so that you could compare competitor pricing to your pricing. Customers, so you can store that in one spot. Engineers, architects, manufacturers, subcontractors, and vendors. And even with cost, you'll notice here with my labor cost highlighted, one set of cost is not going to cover every bid that you're doing. So absolutely, you should be able to store different rates that affect the base burden cost in the back end of these things. So again, unlike Excel, you're not having to go in and tweak those numbers every time you need to put a bid together. And one of the things here that I'm a big fan of our crew templates. The crew template lets you put in, again, some standardizations because, again, the rework of every estimate that most people do in Excel is they're having to retool their crews every time they put a bid together. We allow you to store crew templates in as many different crew templates as you want that match the type of work that you're going to be using in a bid. Multiple types of excavation crews, multiple types of concrete crews, of pipe crews. That way you can go in and throw the most common equipment that you would use, the most common labor types. You could store production rates. You could look at costs. How many hours do you usually use the equipment on a day? How many labor hours do you use in a day? So those things let you do this. So again, you're setting up standards so you're not forgetting to put things in this crew when you drop it into a bid, but easily make any adjustments when you copy this into an estimate so things become estimate specific. And then, as I mentioned, stored repetitive line items. This is where, with companies I've worked with, they always give me a little bit of feedback on, well, that item's going to change. How can I store items in a database? I always found as I work with customers over the years, when you build an item ahead of time and store it, there's commonality. Is it the unit of measure you're going to use? Maybe a starting point crew, maybe a starting point material list. Those things can be stored inside these repetitive items so that you've got a starting point. Production rates that you can preset for this crew. Those things can be set so that you can look at it and analyze it before you use it to make sure it's doing what you expect it to. But now, in this case, I'm going to do this asphalt work. I'm going to copy this entire line item into a bid, and now I can go in and make some adjustments to it. Rather than being the data entry clerk every time I need to put a bid together, I now can spend more time estimating and use these defaults and these standards in the back end. And again, this is used by all estimators. Everybody has the same starting point, and then they can make any changes they need. Repetitive DOT items. For the states, folks who are using, or working with the Department of Transportation, you should have ways to build out those items ahead of time, but also not only working and building those items, just like you saw on the previous screen, interaction with those DOT, like the websites. They have websites where you can go pull their bids off. Well, systems like ours, the database-driven systems, you should be able to go in and import those files to create your bid, to create the line items. But not only that, go here on import and see if you have any crews, materials, things like that already built in these items, and have those populate the bid. Different provinces in Canada, the Ontario Ministry hands us off their list of items as well. And they use an Excel-based file that you can import into a system like ours, and that'll set up each of the line items the way that the ministry wants to bid it out, and also go into that library to see if you've got crews or materials built and help you in the process. And then we can pop out a price file at the end of the day. So again, you're not touching the information manually and setting yourself up for errors. All that should be happening very easily. And then, as I mentioned, work breakdown structures. You'll notice down at the bottom of the page here, we actually have the ability to store in work breakdown structures. And there's some standard lists across the industry. There's the CSI Master List 16, Master List 15. And what that does, again, rather than these being line items in a bid that you're seeing over here, all my general requirements for the entire estimate would be on one bucket, with site construction highlighted, all of my site remediation, site prep, all my earthwork is in one bucket, and then I could build separate buckets or work breakdown structure levels that give me all my backfill, all my excavation. So again, it's just a different way of thinking through putting an estimate together, but you still should be able to store those standards. And in addition to using those standard master lists, you should be able to build your own. Put your own numbering structure in there, as many levels deep. Those are the kind of things that will save you a huge amount of time when you're putting your bid together, over and above using Excel, and again, setting up those standards when you pull these structures in. And then you've got the estimate. This is what the estimate looks like. Our estimate is set up with a series of tabs that really walks you in a very logical process throughout the bidding process, from the cover page to getting your items established in the bid, to being able to really highlight, click on an item, see a cost breakdown, look at what's in that item, be able to make adjustments right here on screen. Do I change my production rate? Do I need to change my crew list? Do I change my material list? Save notes and things so that the estimators are knowing exactly for cross-estimating communication. You know why you made the change there. There's notes in there at all times. But again, intuitive, being able to look at this. I know this is a busy screen, but if you look closely, what I have highlighted here shows up on this part of the screen, and then you'll also get a cost analysis so you know if things are working right. And then you've got the estimate. This is that different look and feel for work breakdown structures. These, again, are not line items in the bid. They're each of those common structures that hold the cost, again, for all your earthwork, all your excavation, your backfill, your utility services. But also, a data-driven system gives you the ability to move things around. I can bid it the way I want it, but I can still push it out in the format or to the line items that the customer wants to see back. Again, you just can't do that in an Excel spreadsheet. And then you've got requests for quote analysis. This is what I was talking about. In Excel, this is tough. It's hard to see all the types of materials that you're going to send out for a quote. And by the type of material, you're picking a short list of vendors who can supply you with those materials. And then here from my aggregates, these are all the aggregate materials in my bid. These are all the folks that have sent me in pricing, and very easily I can see who the cheapest guy is and right here assign this group very quickly. And if somebody calls and gives me a bigger adjustment and they're now cheaper, I can very quickly change that to another vendor and it'll update the entire estimate. And then error checking. As I mentioned, in an Excel spreadsheet, an error is an error is an error. And you can do some conditional formatting and things to show you some things that are going on within Excel. But ultimately, there is no one button click that's going to show you all the mistakes or potential mistakes. And you'll see what I mean at the top here. I'm looking at, this thing has found fractional crew days. Well, maybe I don't care about 2.2 days. It's also found that I've got production rates that I did not update from their default state. Well, my crew is using that production. Well, I put it into the bid, and it may be different for this estimate. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it gives you the ability to highlight and actually go to those areas in the estimate so you can make sure that that's what you want. Zeros in the bid, those kinds of things. And it's not checking just for costing mistakes. There's requests for quote management errors. You should be able to check for bid closing errors. And again, just one click and I can look at the entire estimate to do that. And then proposal creation. Again, there's just no great way to generate a proposal out of an Excel spreadsheet. You can build kind of a static look and feel inside Excel, and it would feed information into one single way to look at it. But in this case, maybe you've got different phases of your bid. It's not just a line item or tender bid. You want subtotaling, you want signatures, you want contact information, you want your own header at the top. All those things are what a good data-driven system can give you. And then you've got reporting. This is another piece that's tough. Excel, to go in and look at Excel, you set up your tabs, you know the information that's going into that tab, but if you wanted to look at it differently, or if the owner walks in and wants to look at it a little bit differently, then there's really no other way to do that. In a good data, we have 76 different reports in our system. I think there's 20 different styles of a cost detail breakdown, showing you how each line item is built, the production, the quantity, the unit, the total, the subcontractors, the vendor information, all in one easy to look at form, and you can change it many, many ways. And then you've got things like this, like reporting analysis and the estimate for bid closing. Now I'm not looking at line items, I'm looking at a summary of my bid, cost, markup, bid versus takeoff. And this is a huge thing, as I mentioned. Centralized storing of estimates give you the ability to check for trends across your bids. So in Excel, you've got all of your Excel files stored individually. Even though they're centrally on your computer, there's not a lot you can do to look across those estimates to see what's going on. In this case, I've got highlighted a win-loss history over any time period with all kind of filtering and things. I've got this group by estimator. I can tell for each of my estimators which jobs they bid. How many did they win? How many did they lose? Dollars won, dollars lost. So again, cross estimate reporting is huge, and you just can't get that out of a spreadsheet. Same thing for this, item history. I want to see how I've used an item. I use this item all the time across multiple bids over many years. Well, I want to see every time I've used common excavation in any bid, what was the quantity? What bids did I use it in? What was my cost? I get to see those variables right there on the screen. And again, I've told you I was going to hit this just a few times today. There's the integration with third-party systems. Say take Project, that's what I have here on my system. Microsoft Project, it is a bear to get everything manually loaded from a spreadsheet in here. It's all manual. Within literally 3 seconds, I can take a file out of a good data-driven system like ours, and it will be fully cost, resource, and duration loaded. Everything's going to be there and fulfill this in that way. Really, when you end up the day, you've just got to mess with your predecessors and or your start and finish dates, and you're done. And that's where I've seen people literally spend hours and days putting a large bid into a project scheduling package. So why are we even having this discussion? What you're doing is working. So why change? You've been using that spreadsheet for 20 years. Why would you want to change from something that's keeping you in business? Or if a lot of companies are growing, can they really keep up? Is that spreadsheet going to be scalable enough that it can now continue to grow with the company for the amount of bids you want to put together, for the types of work that you're growing into? We all know that margins are tight. Competition is just much worse out there. Rather than 10 people bidding on a job, there's 50. So you've got to keep it very tight. And 3 guys down the street are already using data-driven systems. Projects are larger, they're more complex, deadlines are tighter. I spoke to someone just within the last week or so. They can only get so many bids out a week using their Excel spreadsheet, and they've lost, 5 bids in the past 3 months because they couldn't get it out in time to actually see if they would be a contender in those bids. Collaboration. And we're not just talking about collaboration within the Excel file. We're talking about collaboration across the company. Yes, your estimators need to get in and work on this and collaborate, but the owner also needs to get in and take a look and give his opinion. The project manager coming in and saying, well, my guys can't do it that rate. They need to be integral in this. So collaboration across your company is important. And again, those efficient last minute adjustments. The 11th hour the bid is busy. I've been sitting in many job trailers over the year where they have to get that bid out by 10 o'clock that night. 8 o'clock, the phone's ringing off. People are calling them, giving them adjustments. Everybody wants a piece of your bid. So the ability to efficiently put in those last minute adjustments and make sure that if everybody's not in such a hurry that there's so many mistakes going into that bid, it's absolutely huge. Human resource challenges. I always get questioned on this one a little bit when I show this, but let's say the primary one is Joe is going to retire next month. He's been our primary estimator for 10, 15 years. He built that spreadsheet. Who's going to be able to keep that spreadsheet up when he leaves? Or Joe is now quitting, and half the stuff he does is throwing production rates in there as needed in that spreadsheet when he's putting a bid together. How are we going to get that information out of Joe's head? Well, you're not going to get every variable into a spreadsheet, but a data-driven system gives you the ability to do that. Pre-build your crews to the specificity of what he wants to put in, and drop his production rates in there. Drop his crew build in there for everything you're going to need. Building estimates from fully loaded templates. And that's huge, especially all the way up to fully loaded estimates, not even just fully loaded templates. I've worked with a lot of companies where, they're doing smaller projects and it looks just like the project that they did at 3 other parking lots or houses or driveways. Well, why have to recreate the wheel when you don't have to? When you can build full estimates from templates, or fully loaded templates just like you saw before with items and tasks and crews already built in. And the whole piece is leveraging historical data. That makes you more strategic when you're putting bids together. If you're just looking at this bid and looking at what's in your head, then that's very static. And if you pull up a previous estimate that's been put in Excel and you put it on the screen, well, that gives you a little historical data. But if you can look across every bid, imagine what that can do for you to give you the best possible advantage on putting your current bid together. And again, time. Time is money. Less searching for and entering data. And again, every time you touch that information manually, you're setting yourself up for potential for making a mistake. And there it is one more time. Central point of data entry shared with other third-party systems. So where are you? Are you still filling out, napkin bids? Are you still cranking out a tablet with a chisel? Are you still using a yellow pad? Are you working in Excel? Are you even working in a data-driven system? So where you're at is different for everybody. And through the people that I've helped go, from their current system, no matter what it is, into a more data-driven system or a better data-driven system, it's always a challenge because, again, you're familiar with what you do. You know what you're doing works, so why change? But it's a very easy path. And any company that works with you, extensively is going to help you go even from the napkin estimate into a data-driven system. So we've talked about all the aspects of why spreadsheets just aren't good enough anymore. We've talked about data-driven systems. What should you require out of a data-driven system? The top line, enterprise class, speed, and reliability. It's got to be top of the line. It's got to be used on the latest technology. It's got to be fast, and it's got to be reliable. Absolutely, that should be a basic expectation. But it should also be easy, and the interfaces should make sense. As you're going through, and when I was a trainer, I've done lots of training over the years. You teach people. You're going from a world of Excel and what you've known and seen for the last 10, 15 years. When I bring you into another system, it should make sense. Otherwise, you can build the best mousetrap in the world, but if it's not easy to use, nobody's going to use it. And again, advanced reporting, business intelligence. The reporting is absolutely critical so that you can continue to grow on the work that you've done in the past. Eliminate redundant data entry and errors. Absolutely, again, huge. You got to have validation. You got to have error checking. You don't want to put in the same mistake 20 times. And if you are working with the DOT or the ministry or any of the standard municipalities or Department of Transportations, that kind of integration is huge. Cloud hosting. I'm sure all of you have talked about it, discussed it. Cloud hosting, is it right for you? And that's where you have to make that decision. Any good system should be able to be cloud hosted or held on your own server on your premise, but you have to decide if that's going to be the right choice. RFQ, change order management. As we talked about with a request for quotes, you should be able to get easily through the analysis to say who you want to purchase services or who you want to purchase materials from. But also something I haven't talked about a whole lot is change orders. It happens every project. Once you win a bid, being able to manage, create, send out requests for quotes for the change order, being able to send out proposals or bid form for the change order, absolutely critical. Digital takeoff. Every system should have some way, at least it should be an import to grab, the Excel file coming out of that digital takeoff system and bring it in. There should be some way that a system can talk to digital takeoffs. And BIM. I was at a conference recently, and BIM, which is Building Information Modeling, is not something that's very common in the civil industry. But the conference I was at, the speaker said he's seeing it more and more. And what BIM is, it's almost 3D modeling and things so that you can really walk through a project, touch things on screen, virtually, and it changes takeoffs and spits out what you need for that project. And it's usually used in the vertical industry. But he shot me this picture and he goes, "Now, this is a civil construction project that was built in BIM." So virtually walking through that project, making sure that everything that you need and everything you touch is going to feed back into your takeoff. That's where it's going with the industry. And, hang on just one second. I double-clicked there. Basically, now we've talked about spreadsheets aren't good enough, but, you bring it all together after the job is won. And that's where you really have to figure out what you're going to do with all this information. How can you use the information from the estimate across the business? Well, a lot of folks are using it specifically to say, how do we win the job? But a lot of folks are also discussing how do we walk away from this job? You're going to be able to do that and be able to say, well, how do I improve my future bids? You do that by connecting the estimate to the field, by doing ongoing job analysis and post-job analysis. All that information should be able to flow back and forth, so the ultimate thing that you're trying to do here is to improve your future bids. So folks, we'll go down to the end of this. Estimating has evolved. We've gone through this, the future of estimating. So, what kind of the overall look and feel of what we've talked about today is that, we, hang on just one second, my system. So a recap of what we're talking about today is estimating has evolved. It's hard to stay competitive with spreadsheets. It absolutely is. The spreadsheet world, it has its place. You can do lots with it, but really estimating has evolved, and we need to evolve with it. Now, staying with spreadsheets is easy. It's comfortable, and if that's where you want to be, then absolutely. But there are lots of advantage to data-driven systems: speed, accuracy, strategy, accurate centralized data, and also collaboration and data sharing. And then ultimately, you've got to be able to report against your system. And those are just the things that people are looking at that they need over and above an Excel-based system. David, before we wrap up, do we want to bring in questions?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. It sounds like there's a lot of opportunity here. Yeah, we're going to shift now to Q&A. So remember, if you have a question, simply type it into the question pane on the right side of your screen. Mark's here to help, so make sure you don't hold back. We'll aim to get to as many questions as possible, though we do want to make sure we respect everyone's time, so we will try to be done by the hour. The first one I've got here is how long does it take to set up a system like this?
Good question. And we always tell folks that it's really different for everybody. Every company has a little bit more or less data that needs to be shared from their current systems into a data-driven system. I would say on the average, when we're working with a company to set up in the estimating system, you're looking at about a 4 to 6 week window, 4 to 8 week window. But we know that people have day jobs, and with that, they have to be able to do their jobs. So it can vary from customer to customer to customer.
Right. And I've got one that's sort of related to what is the learning curve time frame for this? In other words, how long does it take to train staff to get them using this to the fullest capacity?
There's different versions of the software, and basically which version you buy, the different functions that you need within an estimating package. Most training sessions are anywhere from 3 to 4 days, and when we walk out, there's a very good understanding of how to use the system from that second forward.
Great.
Very intuitive, and it's very hands-on, David. Very, very hands-on in training. So we're letting the people talk, directly to the trainers, but the trainers are not standing there lecturing to them. They're actually making sure that the folks are touching the computer during the training session.
Right, makes sense. Another one I've got here is how do you build the initial database for labor, equipment, etc. That seems to like it might be a difficult process?
It's really not, because most folks have that in Excel. So we're taking that from their current Excel spreadsheet, and we're actually putting it into what we use as an import template. And we work with the guys, one of our implementation specialists, actually work with those folks hand on hand, doing sessions just like we're doing today, where they can see what we need in that person's system, how we need to put it in, but it's all used by an import, so it works pretty well and pretty easy. And also, in a good system like ours and a good implementation team, they'll give it's as well as it is anything. So it's going to be a consultation of what we need, what works best, how we can best build it in a system. But it is pretty quick, because most people have that information already in some system, accounting or their spreadsheet.
Perfect. And the next one I've got here is how do I convince my owner to purchase this?
That's always one of the biggest uphill battles, and it's usually that what's your return on investment? What are we going to be able to do? And a lot of that is the stuff that I went over today. What is it going to set up for you to be able to do, so that we can show that the decrease in time, the increased efficiency, the decreased mistakes, the increased number of bids that they can put out. So with all that, you can look at and capturing a mistake. And one mistake that we could capture with that error checker could save thousands and thousands of dollars, and even pay for the system. So it truly is. There's a lot of factors I even touched on today that really kind of push home that return of investment.
Great. And another one I've got, in what industry or field do you think the software is most likely to be used or recommended in?
For systems
For
like the one that
systems
you've seen
like the one
today,
that you've
it's
seen today,
heavy
it's
civil.
pretty
It,
civil,
you know, but heavy civil has a lot
but
of
civil
you
has
know
a lot of,
points
you know,
that you can touch. That could be anywhere from your heavy civil, your dirt guys, your pipe guys, your bridge guys, those kinds of things. The one industry that these kind of data-driven systems, especially the ones that you're looking at today, probably doesn't work the best with is vertical construction. If you're building a house or building a skyscraper, we can, systems like this can handle the groundwork, the pipe work. It's kind of ground down bridge building, but we do stay shy of those vertical construction projects.
Perfect. Another one I've got is we are a smaller firm but growing rapidly. Do you have an estimated company size, maybe revenue, that is required to use this sort of system?
We really don't, and that's one of the things that has really kept us in the market over the years. Is it's very scalable. We have three versions of this software. It's your basic edition, your professional edition, your enterprise edition, which has different levels of features. And we have truly sold to companies who are small paving companies that are out there doing driveways and putting in parking lots and things. Small companies, all the way up to the biggest companies in the world are using our system. So it's very, very scalable.
Great. And again, sort of related, but how does B2W integrate with QuickBooks or other sort of accounting systems?
Absolutely, and that's one of those subjects I just kept on pounding on today. It has to be able to share the information, and for most accounting softwares, people don't want us to just automatically shove information in, so that we utilize an export of a CSV or a text file, one of those that's been designed for those individual softwares, those ERP systems and accounting systems, and we can push that file out, and then they're imported in so that somebody on the accounting side can take a look at it before they actually commit the data. But it's usually a flat file export, import.
Sounds good. Another one here sounds loosely related. Is BIM is becoming more prevalent in the business? Is the cloud necessary when working with BIM?
And not that I know of. BIM truly is just an advanced way of doing takeoff. So in my cases, I'm not seeing that BIM is cloud hosting is necessary for BIM.
Great. And I've got two here that are very similar. So I'll just fire one off and
You got
see
it.
what you can do with it. When you refer to smaller companies, is there a rough entry level price point that you're able to share?
I really can't, because there's a lot that goes into that question. How many users need to use this? We have concurrent licensure for our estimating product, so it's how many people need to be in the program at any given time, and so the estimator count that needs to be in there, at the same time, the level of the program that you would need as far as the functionality. Those are all questions that our guys are really good about going over with you and determining exactly what you need. So unfortunately, I couldn't give a price point out for that. There's too many variables.
Sounds good. If you kind of figured. So everyone listening, I'm down to one question. So if anybody else has any questions for Mark, we've got about 5 minutes. So just make sure you queue it up. Mark, the last one I've got here is our estimators don't have much experience with computers and software. Will it be hard for them to learn how to use an entirely new system?
I have to say that just from my experience of years and years of training folks in the field, I have met people, again, just like I said, the napkin estimate, the yellow pad, that coming from every modality, and because of the program, it's very intuitive, and because we use your data, your labor types, your equipment types, things that you're familiar with, your terminology, it's very intuitive in that way. We've had incredible adoption of the product over the years, to get people from any style of estimating, any area of computer expertise, And one of the reasons too is when you get into the estimate, what you're touching, it's very repetitive because most things that you're doing, it's the same button. You're just picking a different choice, a different crew, or a different labor type. So it's very repetitive, and because of the defaults and things that we can have in there based on your company needs, it again goes very well for any level of computer experience.
Perfect. And I did get another question in here. Is it available in any other languages than English?
It is not currently. We do sell to folks outside the U.S., Canada. We've got some folks over in Australia and places, but we don't have any kind of translator that translates the language.
No problem. Sounds good. See, we've got a few minutes left, but I think we've sort of asked, or you've got to all the questions already, Mark. So I think maybe let people go a few minutes early. So I just want to thank Mark again for all the information and our sponsor, B2W, for making this webinar possible. Finally, I'll just pass it back to you, Mark, for a final word.
And again, thank you guys for joining us today. If you have any questions, there is the email address that you can direct any questions to our company. We also have an ebook for heavy civil construction estimating and bidding software. If you'd like that, just let us know and we'll be glad to send that out to you. My apologies for the couple little screen errors there at the very end, but I want to thank you very much for joining us today.